Hello, Packers fans, wherever you may be. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast, brought to you from fans for fans. We're excited today for many reasons. First of all, we've got a big re-signing to talk about, but more importantly, after this stream, I will be going to the airport and flying to beautiful Milwaukee on my way to Green Bay. I will be in Green Bay this evening to cover the first three training camps and the owners' meetings for you on this channel. So please give us a like for this video so we can maneuver through the YouTube metrics and hopefully get some additional subscribers before the start of the season. We're trying to get to 5,000 before the start of the season. And give us a subscribe so you're going to get up-to-the-minute updates from training camp all this week and throughout the preseason from this channel. So please give us a subscribe there. Like I said, I'll be heading to Green Bay after this gets posted, and we will be excited to give you all the news and notes from around training camp this week. Biggest news that dropped right before training camp, and it was a bit of a surprise for me. I felt confident that this deal would get done by the end of training camp. I didn't expect it to get done before the start of training camp. And Zack Tom, the fourth-year right tackle, former fourth-round pick, agreed to a 4-year, $88 million contract extension on Monday, according to ESPN. The deal includes $30.2 million signing bonus that is the largest for an offensive lineman. So this is great news. Zack Tom is the cornerstone of that offensive line. He's been a great team player from when he was drafted in the fourth round a couple years ago. He immediately stepped up and became a starter. He has been the ultimate Packer, in my opinion, especially on the offensive line. He's told in anonymity. He's done his job with no drama. He's been exceptional at his job. And while I'm excited about the contract for Tom, I want all of you to embrace that this is also a situation where we have to acknowledge Brian Gutekunst and his drafting ability. Zack Tom was drafted in the fourth round of his draft class, and now he is going to be one of the highest paid offensive linemen in the NFL. This shows you exactly how the Green Bay Packers draft process works to success. There's a lot of people who want to point to possible failures. Jair Alexander because of his health. Luke Van Ness because of his lack of production so far. But at the same time, we should also acknowledge when the Green Bay Packers get it right. And Zack Tom is a perfect example of amazing draft value. So very excited that Zack Tom has this locked up. Is this going to cause problems for Elton Jenkins, where we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, as far as getting his contract done? Now, this also is a perfect example of how Brian works his new contracts. This is actually a very friendly team deal. Now, a lot of the eyes get put on the signing bonus, but this is what the Green Bay Packers like to do. They like to sign a player to a high signing bonus, and that's all of the guaranteed money right up the bat. So you don't have to worry about triggers later on in the contract that are going to complicate the future, and it gives the Green Bay Packers flexibility. They say, here's your 4-year contract with $30 million signing bonus, but at the end of the contracts, the Green Bay Packers have levers where they could tear it up, where they could just say, well, Zack Tom had a couple disappointing years, so we're going to we're going to let him go. Not that I expect that to happen with Zack Tom, but it gives the Packers the flexibility by having a big signing bonus, and then they prorate it over the course of the contract. This is a very reasonable, team-friendly contract for what tackles go for in the NFL. So this is a win-win all the way around. It's great for Zach. It's great for the Packers. I'm glad they got this done before training camp. And I'm very excited to see Zack Tom in a Green Bay Packers uniform for at least 5 years, which is very exciting for me. And it's very team-friendly in the long term, and this contract is going to get better and better as it ages, just like most Green Bay Packers contracts. When last year, Jordan Love got that huge contract extension, everybody was saying that's a huge amount of money, it's ridiculous, he hasn't proven himself. But as we see other quarterbacks sign extensions, the Jordan Love contract, just like this Zack Tom contract, looks better and better over time. Now, I've talked about this in the last video that I put out. If you haven't checked that out, please check that out. The Green Bay Packers are in a great position financially to rule the roost in this division for multiple years. If you look at 2026, the Lions and the Vikings are so in the red, it is ridiculous, while the Green Bay Packers are still in the black with their 2026 year as far as their contracts. Now, that's going to change as players sign, like this Zack Tom signing. I do expect them to get something done for Elton Jenkins before the start of the season. But the Packers, last I checked, and I checked yesterday, are $15 million in the black for 2026. The Vikings and the Lions are over $50 million in the red for 2026. So the Green Bay Packers, not only have they improved their talent year over year consistently, they've done it in a responsible way, and the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings are really going to feel the pain in 26 and 27, which really means the Green Bay Packers are set up for long-term success in this division. Not with the young players that they have, still the youngest team to make the playoffs the last 2 years, but also with their contracts. They've done a really good job setting things up. It's really exciting to look at the talent on the field, but for me, it's also exciting to look at the black and white of these contracts and see that the Green Bay Packers are set up for success in the future, not with just the Zack Tom contract, with the Jordan Love contract, with all the contracts they're putting out right now. They're doing a great job of being financially responsible and still rewarding their core players, which is exactly what you want to see from the Green Bay Packers. Now we have some other news and notes from training camp. Per Rob Demarowski of ESPN, 8 players will start on the reserve lists. We have the PUP list, which is Quay Walker, Christian Watson, Colin Oliver, Mika Robinson, John Williams. Non-football injury, which means the injury happened outside of practice. We have Elton Jenkins, Alex Hale, who they released yesterday, so that's not a problem. He's was our international kicker. He's been released. And Amar Johnson, and we're going to go over all of those. But non-football injury means an injury took place outside of the building, so to speak. So we're going to talk about each of these players now really quickly and give you a rundown. Now, 8 players going in on the reserve list. Most of these were either expected, or I believe that they're going to be minor injuries that will get worked out before the start of the season. So let's go through each of these. Quay Walker is an interesting addition to this list. He did not practice in OTA and minicaps. We have no details about any injury. Is this tied to working on his contract? I know the Packers declined his fifth-year option because it was not viable for them to sign a fifth-year option for Quay Walker, not only because of his playing time, but also because of the fact that outside linebackers that are pass rushers are thrown into the same mix as off-ball linebackers, and it just really throws off the fifth-year option for linebackers. So is this part of the Packers working on a contract for Quay Walker, or is there some sort of a nagging injury that they want to get taken care of? He was seen at practice at OTAs and minicamps, mostly riding a bike. He was in like the recovery group that's dealing with injuries. He didn't see a lot of action there. So that tells me one of two things. Either they're working on some sort of a contract with Quay Walker for a long-term deal, or there is some sort of a nagging injury that they want to get taken care of before the start of the season. I'm not worried about Quay Walker at this point unless we hear there's a serious injury. But the fact that we've seen him on a stationary bike and that he's been stretching with the team leads me to believe it's not a serious injury. So we're going to have to watch Quay Walker very closely. I will be watching Quay Walker hopefully in those first three training camp practices that I will be at. Hopefully we will see Quay Walker on the field. I'll be watching very closely to see if he gets on the field. Next up is Christian Watson. No surprise, he'll be out till mid-October. All signs for Christian Watson is that his recovery is on schedule or possibly ahead of schedule. So from what I've seen him in the recovery group in OTA and mini camps, he looks like he's progressing really well. He's also posted an Instagram video where he's cutting very well. But of course, that's on a practice that's not controlled by the team. So we'll have to see what happens there. But Christian Watson looks like he's going to be here in mid-October. Colin Oliver, we don't have any injury details, but he did not practice in OTAs and minicamps. So what's happening there is to be determined. I'm hoping he will get into practice and hopefully some preseason games before the start of the regular season. Colin Oliver, with his flexibility at playing end and linebacker, is a great player that I expect to be on the active roster by the start of the season, but we have to see him on the field to see what we're really working with. So we'll have to see what happens there. Mika Robinson, we don't have any details on his injury. He did participate in OTAs and minicamps. So maybe, again, this is a nagging injury that they're just trying to wrap up before the start of the season. Mika Robinson is definitely a depth addition to this team. He could possibly end up on the active roster or on the practice squad. We're going to have to see how that shakes out. Definitely, the more time he spends on the field, the better chance he's going to be on the active roster, because we have a lot of young corners that are fighting for depth in the cornerback room. So we're going to have to see how that shakes up. Next up is John Williams. He's not participated in OTAs and minicamps. I don't know what the injury is. But in my opinion, the longer John Williams does not get in practice, the more likely he's going to be a practice squad player. So we're going to have to see what happens here. I don't think John Williams has enough time to show what he can be in training camp to be on the active roster. So John Williams is probably looking at the practice squad, especially if he has an injury and isn't able to show what he has on the practice field before the start of the season. Next up, Elton Jenkins is on the non-football injury report. This is 99% due to his contract. There might be some sort of a thing. This is basically the trend in the NFL right now, where Packers will hold, where players with a contract dispute will hold in. They'll say, I'm here, but I've got this cramp in my side, so I don't think I'm going to be able to practice till we get this contract worked out. I think that's going on with Elton Jenkins. I'm hoping that in the week that I'm in Green Bay, we'll see some movement on Elton Jenkins, but I don't know what's going on here. I feel like the Packers are playing a little hardball with Elton Jenkins. He's got 2 years on his contract. At some point, if the Packers want to, they could tell Elton Jenkins, hey, our doctors have cleared you. You don't have an injury. Either get on the field or we're going to start fining you. And that will be a fork in the road for the relationship between Elton Jenkins and the Packers. And I don't think they want to do that. So I think they're going to try to have some conversations with him the first 2 days of couple days of training camp and see if they can get him onto the field, hopefully by the end of this week. But watch this very closely. How are they going to handle the center snaps without Elton Jenkins on the field? Are they going to take Sean Ryan from right guard and put him on into center? Are they going to take Monk, who's currently our backup center, and have him run with Sean Ryan as right guard? We're going to have to see what happens here. Now, the important thing to think about is right now with Elton Jenkins, the first week of practice is going to be without pads. So offensive linemen and defensive linemen are not hitting. It's non-contact for both of those positions right now. So it's very likely that Elton Jenkins being out this first week is not going to be a significant impact either for the Packers or for Elton. But next week, when practices go with pads, that's when the Packers are going to have to start figuring out what are our options and solutions for center. Seriously. Right now, they could put Jacob Monk in at center and say, okay, Jacob, you're going to play center right now. Sean Ryan's going to stay at guard. And we're going to go through the motions because we're not going to be actively hitting each other. And it's going to be next week that really determines where the Packers are going at center. Are they going to work out something with Elton? Are they going to try to come up with a plan B if he's still focused on this contract and we can't get him on the field? This is going to be very important because we have football starting in 10 days, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Alex Hale has been cut from the team. He was on the NFI. That's probably why, because they weren't expecting to keep him for training camp. Not a big deal here. He was the backup kicker. He was on the team because they had an international exemption. Now, does the release of Alex Hale signal that they want to have that spot open for Al Gersma as potentially the number 3 quarterback? He has Canadian ancestry, so therefore Al Gersma can be considered an international player for the roster. So is this a move they did because they want to keep Al Gersma in the building? Something to watch. I'll be watching that very closely in training camp this week. Then we have Amar Johnson. No details on his injury, but it does not help him get a chance to be on this roster because he was unlikely to make the team because the Packers have such depth at the running back position. But this does not help him. So next thing I want to talk about is our rival. And in my opinion, the Detroit Lions are really the Green Bay Packers' rival right now. Now, I know historically, and I'm a long-term Packers fan, Bears still suck, is deep in my blood, but the Bears are not our competition this year. It is all about the Lions. And things are not going well for the Lions this offseason. It just got a lot worse with Levi Owanzake I know I butchered his name. He was a starting defensive tackle for the Lions. He underwent surgery for a torn ACL and will be out for the season, per Adam Scheffler 2 days ago. So this is a really big problem for the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have so many things going on right now that I think a slow start to the season is almost inevitable for the Detroit Lions. We've got new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. We have new position coaches. Now they've lost another key starter on defense for the whole season before the start of the season. This is really bad news. And the reason this is bad news for Detroit is their defensive line is a big part of their defense. And it's not looking so great for them. Right now, they have Davenport at right end. They've got McNeil, who's a very good tackle. Now they're going to have Reeder probably move in as their second defensive tackle. And then they have Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson is a great defensive end. I'm not going to take anything away from Aiden Hutchinson. But here's the problem. If the right defensive end in Davenport is very average, and they're having problems with their defensive line in the interior, suddenly their opponents, especially Green Bay Packers week 1, can say, you know what? We're going to put extra help on Hutchinson's side. We're going to shift the line. We're going to let Davenport possibly go free as a pass rusher and put 2 people on Hutchinson, maybe even run towards Hutchinson. And the Lions' defensive line is not going to have enough impact players to offset that. And then we've talked about the fact that the offensive line, the interior offensive line for the Lions, I've talked about that in previous videos, is looking very bad. The offensive line for the Detroit Lions, they've got 2 great tackles, and then their center and their guards are possibly going to be a big problem for them for at least the start of the season. So we see the Detroit Lions on offense and on defense are going to lose at the point of attack, especially against the Green Bay Packers this year. So I'm very excited to see how the loss of players on the offensive line and the defensive line really impact the Lions winning at the point of attack. Their interior offensive line is going to be very susceptible to the pass rush up the middle, which we know their quarterback does not handle well. Next, now we find out their defensive line in the middle, where the Green Bay Packers love to run the ball, is not looking very good. So those 2 factors are going to be really huge week 1, where the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers will be matching off for week 1. I will be there in Green Bay for that game. Very excited about this game. I expect the betting line to move closer to 2.5 before this game, because the Detroit Lions are seeing some material issues on the field. They're seeing issues with their defensive line, issues with their offensive line, and it's going to be real interesting to see in the preseason how their new coordinators are able to adjust for these issues. And preseason is going to give us a really good look, because the Detroit Lions did not have mini camp because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game. So their first they have 4 preseason games because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game. They're going to probably play their starters a lot more than you would expect, because they have a lot of moving parts that they have to fix in the preseason, because they haven't really had time in training camp to deal with it. So look for the Detroit Lions, number 1, to play their starters more than they normally would this preseason. Number 2, we're going to have to see if their coordinators are really up for the task of coordinating their offenses and defenses. And we'll see that a lot in the preseason this year. So I'm going to be watching the Detroit Lions very closely in the preseason, especially that Hall of Fame game. How did they handle their offense and defense? And how does their offensive line and defensive line adjust for these significant losses that I really think bring the Detroit Lions back to the pack, pun intended. And I think the Green Bay Packers are going to be playing the Detroit Lions week 1 at the perfect time to get a victory at home. So I'm very excited about that. And as I said, I'm excited that I'm going to be in Green Bay tonight and that we're going to be covering training camp, the first 3 practices, and the owners' meeting. I'm a little worried about practice on Thursday because that might be moved indoors because they're expecting to have some bad weather on Thursday. But if they practice, I will be there, rain or shine. So very excited to report that for you. We'll be there in Green Bay for the next 3 days, and I'll be giving you plenty of reports on the road. So give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next video. As always, go Pack Go. If you see me in Green Bay the next couple days, feel free to say hello. I'm very excited about interacting with my Green Bay Packers fans and subscribers. So please step up and say hello. We're close to getting to our 5,000 goal of subscribers before the start of the season, and I hope we could get there with your help. And we'll see you in Green Bay the next couple days. Talk to you then.